Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Vision Réel International Documentary Film Festival. So today we're going to talk about updating the archives, so the use of archival images in documentary filmmaking. This roundtable is organized in relation to the ARCHIDOC workshop, which is organized by La Femis, and we thank them for this. And if you're interested, there are pitching sessions. Yes, there are pitching sessions of the of Archidac who are going to take place on Friday at 9:30 here, and they're public, so you can come and listen the pitchings. So. To start the discussion, I'm going to start with a very famous quote on the archives and the historical importance of archival images from the very beginning of cinema, 1898. The quote goes like this: the cinema collection, of necessity restricted in the beginning, will expand more and more in the measure that cinematographic photographers' curiosity moves from merely entertaining or whimsical scenes to actions and spectacles of a documentary interest, and from humorous slices of life to slices of public and national life. From simple pastime, animated photography will thus become an agreeable method for studying the past. So this quote is from an essay which is called A New Source for History by Polish writer Bolesław Matuszewski. In this essay, he talks about the value of filmed images as historical landmarks of the real events. Well, 120 years later, we're here talking about the importance of archival footage in filmmaking. So let's just say that he was right in his assumptions, and now we have archival images to bear witness to the past. So the fact is that archival images, even if they're in dark, cold storage rooms and somewhat forgotten, they still keep their referential status as regards to the past, and so they're used in contemporary cultural production, namely documentary filmmaking, which, as complex and creative as it may be, shares one thing in common with archival footage, which is the real aspect or appearance, although this can be very debated. So now let's come back to the roundtable and to the present time with all our new tools and institutions. On one hand, we have the digital era and all the new ways of filmmaking, and on the other hand, we have the whole industry of cinema with film production companies and also film archives. And to use a documentary with archival footage, actually these two institutions need to collaborate. And today, here with us, we're very happy to have on this panel 4 experts from different positions and backgrounds. There are 2 representatives from the archives and 2 representatives from film production. So here to my left, there's Werner Schweitzer from joint venture in Zurich, film producer. Then we have Susana de Sousa Dias, Portuguese director who has directed award-winning films such as 48 from 2010 and Still Life from 2005. And then we have Martin Korber, who's the head of film archives in Deutsche Kinemathek in Berlin. And last but not least, we have Michel Dain, also head of film archives, but in Cinémathèque Suisse in Lausanne. So what I propose here is to review the whole chain of using the archival images in documentary filmmaking and ask our participants here to comment on different questions and dilemmas. And I think it would be a good starting point to start by the technical and practical points. And so, yes, let's start at the very beginning where the images are, so the archives. So I'm going to ask Martin, first of all, to tell us how you work with the directors who come to you in search of footage.
Okay, well, first of all, I think we must make clear that most of the archival footage is not within the archives at all.
That is also
Selling
true.
archival footage is big business, and it's done by footage houses. Does this thing work?
Yes. I I think it was on.
Maybe I'm incompatible. That's the way to do it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
can you hear me better now? No? Maybe I should make this.
Maybe you can use another mic.
This is just. Yeah, this is better, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, okay, what I said before is, of course, we have nobody here from the professional archival business in terms of footage selling, but it's just something that I wanted to bring up to put it into perspective. What we are doing in the archives is absolutely a minority business in comparison to what is the archival footage that you normally see every day in documentaries, on television, or wherever, you know. And it's a very different business. It's big business. There is even a worldwide organization called Focal, which is kind of trying to focus all this stuff. They give themselves like Oscar-type prizes for best use of footage or best restoration, whatever that means, of footage and so forth. So this is not what we can talk about here, or at least not what I can talk about here, because I cannot even afford to go to their meetings because it's several £100 to attend. And then you get a glass of champagne and see somebody else getting a medal or something. So it's not worth the trouble. We are working with filmmakers. I mean, we're very happy to work with filmmakers, actually. And I was a filmmaker before I went into this archival business for a little while. And I was also working with archival footage. What other footage would there be? I mean, if you want to make documentary films, you cannot go around using archival footage in one way or another, even if it is maybe a minority part in what you do. And one of the first things I did was changing the attitude of the archive towards filmmakers. Previously, we had those famous cold vaults where things were buried that you already brought up. And when the film had not viewing status, it would never be viewed by anybody. And that, I think, is completely wrong, because most of the stuff that hasn't been explored and that is possibly unique, and that is maybe nitrate or is a fragment or is endangered because it's physically vulnerable, must be seen, because otherwise it will die in the cold vault, because no one will ever see it, no one will ever pay for its preservation. So if we don't open up all these parts of the archive to the user, they will never be used. And since we have this attitude, this is about 10 years now, the use of the archive has increased incredibly. We can hardly cope with it, because it's when then somebody comes and wants something, they usually want it very quickly, like the next day or so, but it is 500 miles away and it's cooled down to minus 18 degrees, so that cannot be done. And they want it in a format which we do not have. Our films are on 35 or 16 millimeter usually, and not on HD, and at best maybe on a DJ beta that someone sponsored decades ago. So one appeal to the filmmakers that may be here in the room: please ask us earlier, not when you are already in your final stages of editing and you want to replace some piece of footage that you have on VHS and you guess that we also have it and then you want better quality. That's not a good idea. Just involve us as early as possible, even when you start thinking about the film, because looking at the stuff early will change your attitude towards your own film, which could be useful for both sides. I could go on and on and on, but that's not what you want, I guess.
So I think you brought up a lot of interesting questions that we're going to get back to, especially about the endangered films, and also about the cost and rights and all of them. And we're going to get back to all of them. But for now, I also wanted to ask Michel what he thinks about this. What you think about this subject? How do you work with directors who come to you in search of images that they want to put in their documentary film?
Bon, alors je vais parler en français.
So there will be Fanny who will translate Michel into English.
Voilà. Sauf si tout le monde comprend le français.
Uh,
Non. Donc on va traduire. Donc j'ai bien écouté ce qu'a dit mon voisin et je vais essayer de ne pas répéter les mêmes choses en français. Et puis, si je répète les mêmes choses, tu ne les traduis pas. Donc la question c'est comment est-ce qu'on travaille avec
comment
les...
vous travaillez avec les réalisateurs
Voilà,
qui viennent
ouais.
vers vous?
Alors c'est différent pour chaque demande. Je dois dire que le plus souvent, nous travaillons avec des recherchistes. Donc, ce n'est pas très souvent qu'on a une relation directe avec un réalisateur. Ou alors, c'est par période. Il suffit que... Alors, à quoi ça tient, je ne sais pas. Peut-être que certains réalisateurs disent « appelle tel et tel à tel endroit, il m'a rendu service pour tel film ». Ah, pardon. Peut-être que...
So Michel said he was trying not to repeat what Martin Korber said. He says that it's very different depending on who asks and when. More often, the Cinémathèque Suisse works with searchers, so it's not the same process as filmmaking, and it's less often with filmmakers.
Voilà, et un recherchiste donne une idée générale du film ou résume un peu le thème du film. Alors, soit la demande est très précise, on veut des victimes du crétinisme en Valais, parce qu'il n'y en a pas dans le canton de Vaud, vu qu'on a des mines de sel. Ça, c'est peut-être pas nécessaire de traduire. Et puis, la demande concerne des images géographiquement très localisées, ou alors c'est un thème général, et puis c'est plus compliqué parce que là, il faut faire plusieurs propositions.
So speaking about the searchers, they usually have an idea of the film that can be very general, and that's more difficult to find images for that, or it's very precise, like images of a special location of a city in Switzerland and something like that.
Voilà. Je peux parler longtemps, donc là, on peut passer à la question suivante.
Yes, I think we can also give a chance to the other people. So, to just stay in the same on the same subject, I also wanted to ask you, Werner, how does this work on your side? How do you work with the archives? Do you have a general idea of what you want to use in your film, and then you go to the archives and you ask for the exact scenes, or do you have some discussions on curatorial choices and the selection?
I have my favorite archives. This, for one example, is the National Archive in Washington, which when I'm there, I can really work by myself. I often because most of my films I use archive footage, and since 20 years I'm working together with a visual researcher in Washington, and she knows how to handle all the bureaucratic stuff and the rights and so on, and I give her a synopsis of my next film, and then some ideas what I'm looking for. So when I'm there, the first 2 days, I have enough material, film and video cassettes to view, and then I try to be there 3-4 days longer. It's absolutely free, and I only have to pay the travel cost and a cheap hotel, and then it's really a great opportunity to really find things which you don't expect. You can work from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 in the evening. You have your own montage equipment, you have VHS equipment, you can make your own DVDs for your rough cut, you can make your copies by yourself, with the exception of some restricted material, but also this is possible. You have your camera with you, you can film the sequences from the editing table. So it's really, for me, it's kind of paradise, National Archive. Then next is INA, and Cinematheque is not so generous, but I know Michel Dand, and I gave him some ideas, especially subject, place, and he gives me also some, because he has everything in his head. We start now to put that also on a computer, but it's not yet finished. It's much more difficult to make the research in Switzerland and or in other archives. Especially, I was working also in in Czechoslovakia, in Hungary, and East Berlin, which was quite well. But it depends on the archive. But for me, it's always a good start into a film project, because it gives me also an inspiration. I see other films, other angles, other point of views, which I think has a lot of influence in your filming. And I start before I start filming with my team, I often start research on the archive footage.
So before we get to Susanna, Michel, do you want to say something on what we just heard from Werner? Why do you think that it's more difficult in Switzerland to have the
Oui,
images?
oui. Mais juste peut-être pour préciser qu'il y a bien des années, avant l'apparition, l'utilisation de la vidéo et des transferts dans les archives,
He just wanted to precise something. Many years before the use of transfer with VHS and DVD,
il est certain que les directeurs ou le directeur de la Cinémathèque suisse d'alors invitait, laissait venir les réalisateurs faire ces recherches. Il n'y avait pas forcément, il y a très peu de gens ou personne, peut-être qu'une personne qui s'occupait de la mise à disposition d'images d'archives.
the former directors would let the filmmakers come and do their own research, because there was actually only one person in charge of creating the films.
Imaginez Richard Dindo qui vient faire une recherche à la Cinémathèque. Moi, je suis sûr que tous les réalisateurs sont très soigneux avec leurs propres films. Par contre, je ne suis pas sûr que tous les réalisateurs sont soigneux quand ils prennent en main des images d'archives. Donc, là aussi, peut-être dans les archives, les gens ne sont pas toujours suffisamment soigneux. Mais il y avait un danger à mettre entre les mains de ces chercheurs, de ces réalisateurs, des films, des copies uniques, et peut-être parfois souvent en état instable, voire en situation de se dégrader.
He says he's sure the filmmakers are very careful of their own films, but he's not so sure that they were always careful with the archive material, and that can be dangerous when it's a unique and fragile copy.
Donc, juste pour dire, vous voyez les gens, j'ai vu ce morceau-là, je recule, j'avance avec la visionneuse, et ça c'est le pire qu'il y a à faire avec les films, juste pour cet aspect.
Typically, when you're watching a film on visionneuse, the
machine.
viewer, when a filmmaker says, "Oh, this is maybe interesting," and he goes back on the film and on again, that can be very dangerous for the material.
So now, Susanna, now that we have come to this point that maybe some filmmakers are not very careful on the film, could you also could you also express your idea? How do you yourself work with the archives, and do you really work with the film, or do you prefer to have the images digitized? Or
well, I have to say that my experience with archives, it's really, I had a lot of problems. My work started 15 years ago, so many things changed during this period. But one thing that I like very much to hear is one observation of Martin, that even the endangered films must be seen, because otherwise they will be dead. And this is a problem that I confront myself every time I'm going to an archive. And if I think in the Portuguese, now I'm talking about the Portuguese ones, the Portuguese Cinematheque, or even the public channel TV archive. And I'm not speaking about the political police film archive, that it's another kind of problems. But I always feel lots of obstacles. Yeah, lots of obstacles. For instance, when I made, you mentioned Still Life in 48. When I started to do Still Life, it was 10 years ago. It was completely absurd because I do the research myself. I don't have, well, I like to make the research myself. So, and it was very difficult, and it is very difficult because the database, it's not open. So we don't know exactly what it is in the archives. I don't know how it is in Berlin or here, but we don't know. Okay, yeah, but at least you know some parts. Yeah, you don't know everything, but at least some things you already know. But it's the problem of sharing. So we had to ask somebody inside, and this person inside the archive made the research, and then we had to find another ways of trying to them to find exactly what we are looking for, and sometimes, as we don't know what it is there, we don't know how can we do the research. So this is one problem. It's a little bit closed, and there are parts that could be public, I think. Another problem is the prices. I mean, if the viewing, it's not expensive in the Portuguese Cinematheque. The buying of the materials were, when I made Still Life, it was completely crazy because I asked them.
The rights or the transfer?
No, just the transfer. I asked them, okay, you have some copies in VHS, so you can make a special price because I don't want. I need the material to see it and to work in the editing table, and this is one of the biggest problems of the filmmakers. I mean. For the films I make, it's not necessary. It's not just enough to say, okay, I need an image of the troops entering in Berlin or something like that. I need to see what is in the image. It's not my theme, so I have to look inside the image. And only if I got the material with me, I'm not going to the. Well, actually, I made this in the army archive because they had no copies, so I had to watch the film, but with a lot of care, of course. But so we need to have the materials with us. And what happened was that the Portuguese Cinematheque didn't want to sell the material with a different price. So for them to sell 1 minute of VHS or 1 minute with broadcast quality was the same price. And of course, this prevents us from editing, and these was really catastrophic. Now they change, but it was really a problem. On the other hand, the Portuguese TV channel, the viewing is very expensive. 10 years ago, it was 35 euros per hour for students, researchers, for producers. Everybody's equal. They don't make distinctions. So for a poor student, it's completely impossible, or for a researcher to do a proper research. And then they have this figure of they can sell the DVDs and with much less expensive. But it's always we have always problems. But now, of course, that it's easier because they start to bring some materials to online database. So things are changing because it's paramount that they change. We live in other times. So, but even so, I think things should be more open. And it's a paradise what you described before. The work in Washington.
US, yes.
Yeah, and then just one more to finish. Another very important thing, it's this idea of the image and the focus and these big sellers of images. But sometimes we have the idea, even in public services or in cinematheques, that shouldn't be like that. that the image is a commodity. So it's not, it's something that people have to earn money, just not, well, and here I understand this difference between the public, the private owners that really want to sell and to make money, but the cinematheques and public archives, sometimes I always have a doubt what they are doing with the images. Well, I'm not talking about you, of course. No, because you touch the subject, but in a very positive way, actually. That
Well, just wait.
it was good to hear.
So yes, I think that it brings us to the preparation of films, especially because if we want to use the films have to be prepared. And so, from an archival point of view, Martin, what do you think? If the films are in bad conditions, this may take quite a long time, and also this can cost a lot of money. And so, whose responsibility is that? Do you just give the film to the producers, or
No, I don't give any film to any producers. Unless we come to an agreement what happens to the film. I mean, if it is a very vulnerable film, like a nitrate film which is damaged or even has other problems or is unique in some way or fragile in any way, then of course not anybody can do this on the editing table with this film, but we will make sure that this film will be assessed for its status, and then we can say it can be viewed or it cannot be viewed, and I think it should be viewed, but under supervision of someone who can do it without hurting the film. And then the filmmaker will eventually decide, this is something I want to use, or this is something I do not want to use. If you don't want to use it, too bad, the film goes back into its dying cabinet, you might say. Or we have learned something about the film, which we haven't seen before, probably. So we could make our own decision on a more kind of educated level, maybe. If the film is then chosen to be part of your project, we have to agree on a price, and then it becomes a little more complicated because, of course, we are probably cheaper than these commercial archives in the first place. And that's why filmmakers like to come to us, because they don't want to pay these prices, even though sometimes the footage is the same, actually. And our footage may be better because we have originals and they have copies, but it's really difficult to say because it's different for every single film. And I know many people who want to use German footage, I mean the famous Nazi footage, for instance. Of course, they all go to Washington because it's so easy. But then you will see the 16mm copies that were made in 1948 or something. Too bad for you. Yeah, that's the drawback. No, but in some cases. But let me just, it's just an example. Yeah. So the assessment of what is really the quality that you want is also very difficult, because some of the footage that is very popular is everywhere, but it is not the same. I want to point out, because it is really different if you go from an original negative or from an original vintage print or from something that has been printed down 5 generations. And we have to have a dialogue with whoever comes, and that is crucial, because in this dialogue we will determine what is best for this film we have and what is best for the filmmaker. We may also send this filmmaker who finds an image that he wants somewhere else, because we know it is better available somewhere else. Or it may already be digitized somewhere else. This dialogue will eventually lead to an agreement, and ideally the agreement will bring about the preservation of the film. And then we have the conflict, this person only wants 30 seconds out of this film. But the film is perhaps like 500 meters or even 5,000 meters in some cases. What do we do? Do we want to print only one reel, or do we want to digitize only one reel, or do we want to do more? And what we usually try to do, we try to bring the price to some level that will ensure the preservation of this film that is in need of preservation, or at least a digitization, which may not be even proper preservation. It's different for every title. But if you don't make the effort of having this dialogue, then you will not get anywhere. The people will go home frustrated, and we will just have another scratch on our print. That makes no sense. Yeah. So we will try to find a compromise, and we will also put some of our own money on the table in some cases if there is a filmmaker who cannot afford everything we want, but who can afford 50%. For me, that's better than no percent. Yeah. And in some cases, when these criminals come who never took care of their own films, like Paramount Pictures, for instance, who lost the German sound on a 1948 film that was dubbed in those days, and we still have a banged up pink scratched print, but it has the German soundtrack, and they badly want it because they licensed the film to someone and don't have the German track, then they have to pay the full price.
So I think, Susanna, you wanted to
No, it
react.
was just it's very important is because one problem we have with our public TV archive is that they don't go to the originals. I mean, we ask for something, and it happened in my last film that I just finished it. I ordered some images that I have seen some years ago, and I bought them. They gave it to me, and they were in a very poor condition. It was impossible to use them because they had the fields were in the transfer. Yeah. So I said it's impossible. You have to give me the good images, and they say no. What we are giving you is the restored copy. So the restored copy was worse than not the original, but the copy of the original. So I asked them to show me the original, to make a copy from the original, and they did not, the film, because it was film. So in the end, I had to buy the copy of the copy of the copy that was in better condition of the restored copy. So, and this is really, it's something that still happen. In Cinematheque, things during these 10 years in the Portuguese Cinematheque, things changed a lot. But in the public TV, we have these problems every day. So these things, it's, I think.
So personally, what do you? I will get there as well. So personally, what do you prefer to have? Do you prefer to have like raw scans of films and then work on them yourself, or because you say that the restored version was not good and the quality was not good?
No, I always try to get the best. For instance, for this film, Still Life, I used the archive material from the army archive, and I managed to ask them, and then they managed to discover the negatives, and so I used the negatives to make the good copies. So I saw all the material, the materials in the moviola Steinbeck.
Yes.
I do this carefully, but it was copies. So, and to choose the material to buy, I made copies directly from the negatives. So this was a very good thing. But sometimes it's impossible because they are lost in the archive. So like these TV channels just have the copies of the copies of the copies. They forgot, I think, the origin of things. Yes. I don't know.
I have to add an information about the paradise of the National Archive in Washington. They are very strict about rights. And of course you can find all the German war material there, but they never make you a copy if you don't have cleared the rights with the German. So it's good for the process of viewing, but then at the end when you really want the archive footage, you have to negotiate with Transit Film or Bundesarchiv, and then yeah, but then you get the real, but then you know exactly how many seconds you want. So I think then it's easier to negotiate, and then you know your budget of your film if it's possible or not. But you cannot get the material in the National Archive from Germany, for example, if the rights are not cleared. So this is also they are very strict. Yeah.
So just to close on this this part of the discussion, there has recently been a lot of debates on the reuse of archival images in films by kind of enhancing them, like adding sound and color. And I'm notably thinking of French historical TV series Apocalypse, which was a modernized version of archival images of the of the two world wars. So, do you think that this question is for you, Michelle? Do you think that for archival images to appeal to new audiences, they have to be enhanced? They have to be then they have to have color and sound, or we can just use them otherwise.
Alors, mon avis, c'est qu'on ne doit pas y toucher. Donc, on présente les images qu'on leur remet. Maintenant, je ne vais pas non plus intervenir dans le choix du réalisateur. S'il a décidé de composer avec les archives qu'on lui met à disposition, que tout est réglé au niveau des droits, à mon avis, la création, là, doit être préservée. Maintenant, c'est un autre...
So Michel Dean thinks you shouldn't touch the archives, but that's his personal choice. Once the filmmakers have the rights for the film, it's normal in their creation. If they want to alter or enhance the images, it's not his say. He cannot go against that.
Maintenant, si le réalisateur veut utiliser l'archive pour vraiment exprimer ou dire à l'époque c'était cette réalité que je veux montrer, il n'a pas à la transformer. Mais c'est son choix éthique. Et il y a pire que de mettre de la couleur ou rajouter de la musique, c'est faire dire autre chose que ce que les images signifiaient au départ.
So the filmmaker, if he wants to express the reality of some images, he should not transform it. But there is worse use than adding color or sound is using the archival image to say something else than they actually say.
Yes, so just to continue with this, I think we arrive now to the actual insertion of archival images in the films. Because as the archival images, they already have a historical meaning. By putting them in a new film, we are also constructing new meanings which may or may not converge with the original one. Sometimes in what we call the compilation films, the idea is just to use the images to reconstruct a historical period, a real history, but sometimes the images are deliberately used in a subversive way, like in fan footage films for artistic reasons. So I think here we can have an ethical discussion on the use of the archives and how can different uses of these images change them and their original historical meanings. I think I'm going to start with you, Martin.
Yeah, well, again, it's very difficult to discuss ethics without examples, of course. And we have brought
Of
some
course,
examples.
you can show your examples
but
whenever
we have
you
to
want.
say some general things before.
Yes.
I would totally agree with Michel that we, as archivists, we certainly have opinions about what we would like people to think of our material. But on the other hand, I would always defend the right of the filmmaker to do whatever he wants with the material. And I mean, rights apart, which is a different issue, but in terms of aesthetics and meaning, a filmmaker, a new filmmaker who uses archival footage must have the right to subvert the meaning of the original footage, because otherwise you could not make the films like the films you made, for instance. Natura e Morte is a film that uses archival footage, and there is a massive intervention, which is not colorization or adding sound or something, but it's zooming into the pictures and it's changing the speed, and this creates new meaning, which is a meaning that you could otherwise not get from these images, because this is footage from the dictatorship that is glorifying Salazar, And if you don't do something to it and put it in a different context, not only by editing, but also just intervening into it in this way, I thought that was convincing because it makes clear that you are not pro-dictatorship. That's fine. Yeah. Somebody who is pro-Salazar would use the same footage in another way, and we can have other opinions about it. But even those filmmakers probably, they must have the right to do their thing, because otherwise we cannot learn from history. We have, in Germany, we have a terrible problem. We have only pictures from the Nazi era that were made by Nazis. And so in every documentary you see, the same images pop up, and they're usually not used very wisely because there is no intervention. So the image of what the Nazis wanted to believe they are is the one that gets proliferated all the time, even by best meaning people who want to say something else, but the image is subverting actually what they want to say. Shall we go to an example?
If you want to, yes.
Yeah.
Just you should
This
just
is
tell
a
me which
complete. This
example.
has nothing to do with Nazi filmmaking. We have considerably contributed to the film by Jean-Gabriel Perriot, Une jeunesse allemande. It's about 45 minutes of this film come from our archive, one way or the other. It's not all our rights, but some of it is just there, and we declared the rights with the original filmmakers, of course. And maybe we can run the first example and I talk over it.
Yes. Alors Lise, on peut passer
We
à la
have 3
slide 3.
clips from it, I think, yeah?
À la slide 3.
Hopefully I can somehow see it here. Okay, that is the beginning of the film. And this is actually not
Mais est-ce qu'il est possible de faire des films en Allemagne
Godard
aujourd'hui?
speaking.
Alors c'est bon.
Impossible d'un point de vue même philosophique. En gros, l'idée, c'était plutôt, moi je partais sur l'idée, c'était de... Est-ce qu'il est possible de faire des images en Allemagne?
Es ist möglich, Bilder in Deutschland zu machen.
This is Jean-Luc Godard speaking off screen about the possibility of making films in Germany, from a feature film by Helmut Kostart, who has invented this wonderful synchronized Super 8 camera. We have his stuff, and now is an image. This is now our film school films from the 60s. Here, this one we had complaints about from the original filmmaker. He made a film, Green Beret, which has only this image for a couple of minutes, but with not this sound, of course, and not with credits above it. And he liked the film by Perriot, actually, but he didn't like that his image was used in this way for the credits and for the campaign for the film. It's on the cover of the DVD, and it is also the poster for the film, and he was never asked about it because we sold Perriot the footage, which we own. It's film school film, so it's public film. But there are also author's rights, which are kind of were scratched in a way. I can understand the complaint. On the other hand, Perriot's use helped us to digitize the film, so I can hopefully pacify the filmmaker by saying, but now it's digital, and
Il y a 20
next
ans,
time
la
will be
jeunesse
better.
allemande était au garde à vous. Dans l'Allemagne d'aujourd'hui, les survivants préfèrent oublier, mais leurs enfants ont du mal à comprendre ces images. Ils croient de nouveau à la culture et à l'intelligence,
This
et
is not
c'est cela
coming from us,
peut-être
this
pour eux
is
qui
actually
est
a
le plus
French
symbolique de la folie
television
nazie. Il
film,
y
I
a 30
think,
ans,
which is
à
quoted
Berlin,
here.
on brûlait les livres du poète Henri
And we
Heine
have the problem
ou de
with the Nazi
Bertolt Brecht.
footage, as I explained earlier.
Est-ce que la démocratie est une réalité dans la jeunesse maintenant? Je crois seulement dans la
Also
jeunesse.
French television.
Seulement dans la jeunesse.
Yeah,
Seulement
I'm sorry,
par la
there's
jeunesse.
no
D'autre part, je
subtitles.
crois que quant à l'autre génération, l'Allemagne n'est pas stable. Au point de vue politique, il y a de nazis partout. Il y a une certaine hésitation entre la démocratie et la vieille idéologie. Je crois que la seule chose où l'Allemagne est vraiment sûre, c'est dans la jeunesse.
Das Motiv, gerade das Hakenkreuz zu wählen für
This is from a
diese
feature
Wandbemalung.
film
Was haben Sie sich darunter
which appears
vorgestellt?
as a documentary. Peter Zadek's film, I'm an Elephant, Madam.
6 Millionen Kill!
Ja, aber ich doch nicht. Ich doch nicht. Hab ich das doch gemacht. Hast du es denn gemacht oder ich? Hat doch keiner von uns gemacht. Darum geht es ja gar nicht. Bei uns sind noch 10 Millionen, 10 Millionen People gestorben bei uns in Deutschland. Das ist genau dasselbe. Ja und? Was heißt denn gemacht? Hab ich das denn gemacht? Hab ich das denn gemacht?
Ich war damals zu jung. Ich musste auf Befehl so handeln.
Das verstehe ich nicht. Wer sagt denn auf Befehl so handeln? Wer kann mir denn Befehle geben?
Seid nur bloß dumme Jungs.
Das ist nur ein Spielfilm.
Das ist ein Spielfilm, ja, der uns lächerlich machen soll. Wisst ihr, was da gehört?
Lass den doch da stehen, ist das ein
Rechts und links an die Löwen gehauen, gehört euch.
Aufhängen vielleicht auch?
Opa, das sind aber eure Kinder. Eure Kinder. Weil,
Okay, stop it. This is actually an example of another kind of intervention, which one could say is kind of a fake documentary, which is part of a feature film. And it's not coming from us. But it's setting the tone. All this is the very beginning of Perriot's film, and it is kind of setting the tone of how he will deal with violence and terrorism in Germany and how it came about and everything.
So, Susanna, I think, do you want to? Yes.
To react to
yes,
these
exactly.
questions.
And if you want to say how personally you work with the archival images of when you get them, how do you work them? How do you create new meanings?
Yeah, because one important thing is to you mentioned apocalypse, and both of you mentioned the need to let the filmmakers do whatever they want to do, and of course we cannot interfere. We just can agree or disagree. I totally disagree with the filmmakers of apocalypse use the images, because there is here a problem. It's that, well, one of the usual problems of the archive footage is that they depict an event, and many times people used to confuse the image with the actual event. And this is a problem. This is in lots of films, well, documentaries, this is a big problem, because images are a representation of reality, not the reality itself. And this is the problem of the Nazi footage, because it's used like it was reality. So we used to see those images, and we keep forgetting that they were shot by the Nazis themselves. So this is one problem. Another problem is that, for instance, Apocalypse they wanted to colorize the images so that they can push the images to be more close to reality, and this is completely they are perverting even the way we used to see the images. And we are in a era of a kind of hyper visuality. Everything has to be shown like it is today. It's a kind of what François Sartre called the presentism. So it's no more past, no more future. So and this is problematic, because images are shown and we don't think about what we are seeing. And for me, this is a big problem. And in my films, I always try to work the images so that people, the viewers, can see the images, well, by themselves. Of course, with my point of view, it's clear, because when we use every filmmaker, each filmmaker can use the same image, and the same image can say yes or no. It depends on what you are going to do with them. And I think, well, I have my ethical limits, but I totally accept that another filmmaker has another limits. And for instance, it was Martin mentioned that I was changing the images, but I was very careful that through the editing I could not give new meanings that were not in the nature of the image itself since the beginning. I mean, I didn't use the détournement. So I tried to make a renversement. It's a different thing. Yes. But this is my limit. So another filmmaker can have another ones. But the most important is that each filmmaker knows exactly what the images are about and their conditions of production. I think this is paramount for a right use, a fair use of the image, even if a filmmaker used the images in a complete opposite way of mine, but it's her or his own view, of course.
And Werner, how do you work with the images? Do you agree with what Susanna says, that there's some ethical limits that you have to respect, or?
Yes, I agree absolutely, and and also in my films I try to say what is the source of this material. Is this propaganda film, or is this an amateur sequence, which sometimes it's much closer to the reality than this propaganda material. But the good thing now, in my last film, I could use my own archive, and this is the best. So you cheat yourself, or it's up to you to choose which sequence you use or not. And it's a second use of your own material. So I think this is the best if you are old enough to have your own archive.
Yes. Yeah. But would you like to show us?
Yes, perhaps you can.
Which
because
one? The second one?
The second one, yeah. Because it's also, it's not only 16 and 35 millimeter, which is archive footage, it's also video, and sometimes much more difficult to work with video than old video.
18. C'est la slide 18, s'il te plaît. And sorry, this one is in German with no subtitles, so I hope that Werner will explain it to us. Sorry.
This is my protagonist, a Swiss banker, and he has my age, and I'm confronting him with my reality. And in this time I was shooting a film.
Ich war mittlerweile Filmproduzent geworden und drehte zu jener Zeit, als Elmar in die Caymans zog, einen Film über Jean Ziegler. Er war jetzt auch Genfer Nationalrat, aber kein bisschen leiser.
Et la Suisse est devenue malheureusement une des principales plaques tournantes dans le monde pour le lavage, le recyclage du crime organisé. Ici, à ce paradis place, s'accumulent des milliards et des milliards. On pense que le crime organisé, c'est l'Interpol qui le dit, a un chiffre d'affaires, des bénéfices de plus de 1000 milliards de dollars par an. Eh bien, une très grande partie de ces bénéfices se réinvestissent à travers les grandes banques de Zurich qui sont une très grande efficacité. Mais quiconque parle de ça ouvertement, comme par exemple moi ou quelques autres personnes, ont immédiatement des procès sur le dos.
Ja, Jean Ziegler, das ist ein Film, den wir mit dir gemacht haben vor 20 Jahren. I wasn't thinking on this example, but this is also a good example. It's also our own archive. It's the archive footage with Jean Ziegler we were shooting in 1993 together with a Belgian company, with Morgan Film, which is now bankrupt. And by chance we found the negative in Amsterdam. I was looking searching like crazy in the Cinematheek. We didn't find it, but at the end it was in Amsterdam. But here we used this archive footage. It's a story about this guy who is a whistleblower in a Swiss bank and the history of the Swiss bank secrecy. And I confronted this banker with my reality, with my friends who were fighting against the Swiss bank system since they are 15 years old. So this was a kind of the montage that I confronted him with my own reality, with my own picture, and used also video material from the 80s when we made demonstrations in the famous Zürcher Bahnhofstrasse, and he was sitting there in the office. And I always said 30 years ago I wouldn't talk with him, but now we made a film together. And for the narration of this film, my archive was very important. But we don't have to see the other one. So, but this also, and this one was 16 millimeter. This is not video. This was even super 16, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So Michel, now a question for you. How do you think that this the spectators can find a balance between the meaning, the original meaning of the images, and the new meanings that are produced in the documentary film.
Les exemples à ce moment-là?
Bien sûr.
Hein?
Oui. Tu veux montrer quel extrait?
Ben, les 3 à suivre parce qu'ils ont...
Ah, d'accord. Alors, Lise, on va montrer les slides 9, 11, 12 et 14, s'il te plaît.
Il s'agit d'extraits que la Cinémathèque a mis à disposition pour un film sur l'histoire de l'école nouvelle.
There are extracts from a film that talk about the new school that the Cinematheque gave to the filmmaker.
Donc il faudrait s'arrêter après chaque extrait. Peut-être.
So we need to stop after each excerpt.
Libération des corps, des mœurs. Les années folles sont aussi les années folles de la pédagogie. Le 2e congrès de la Ligue se tient à Montreux en 1923.
Donc regardez bien, ça c'est
La
Montreux.
psychanalyse s'invite. Carl Gustav Jung, qui a rompu avec le freudisme, est présent.
Ça, c'est pas des images qui viennent à la
Avec
Cinémathèque.
lui, on se demande comment libérer
On nous dit,
l'énergie créatrice
c'est
de
le 2e
l'enfant,
congrès, c'est à
son moi
Montreux.
intérieur. Un professeur d'art plastique, tchèque, expose
So
les
these
travaux de
images,
ses élèves.
they didn't come from the Cinematheque
Čížek
Suisse.
défend une non-méthode, où l'intervention du maître se réduit au minimum pour laisser croître les facultés de l'enfant. Émile Jacques Dalcroze présente son travail de gymnastique rythmique musicale.
Vous marchez sur l'escalier et quand vous entendez un petit triolet, c'est-à-dire 3 petites notes, ta 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 ta, vous vous arrêtez et vous fléchissez les
Voilà.
mains.
Alors là, on peut arrêter.
Puis ensuite, on verra.
Merci pour cet extrait-là.
Un peu vite, un peu lentement.
Parce que on nous dit, on est à Montreux en 22. Or, je reconnais pas Montreux. Je suis vraiment pas sûr qu'il s'agit de Montreux. On nous montre des congressistes. Et puis là, on nous dit, à Montreux, il y avait Émile Jacques Dalcroze, mais ça, c'est des images typiquement du sonore, pardon. On est au moins 10 ans plus tard, voire 15, d'autant plus que là, on les a datées juste d'avant-guerre, ces images-là, normalement.
So
Donc,
the first comment he made on the first images, the narration says we are in Montreux, but Michel does not recognize the city. But it's not the images of the Cinematheque. So they say it's this city, but we're not sure. And for him, it's not Montreux. And this second extract that come from the Cinémathèque Suisse, they are talking about 1927. And this extract is with sound, so it's not possible. It's from the same era. It's at least 10 years later.
Donc ce qui manque, c'est le bandeau qui annonce Émile Jacques Dalcroze, 1934, par exemple. Hein?
What's missing for Michel Dune is like a note on the image that this image is not from 1927, but much later.
Ça serait même bien de marquer Cinémathèque Suisse.
And to also add Cinematheque Suisse on the image.
Donc, quand moi, c'est relativement au début du documentaire auquel on était invité de fournir des images. Donc, après quelques minutes, je me méfie déjà et je suis très attentif à tout ce qu'on va me montrer, car tout le documentaire est fait d'images d'archives commentées.
So this whole film is made with archival images, and these extracts are from the beginning of the film. So when Michel Dun saw this film, at the beginning he started to not really trust the truth of the images, since in the 15 first minutes there's already misuse of the reality of the archive image.
On peut passer au deuxième.
Alors Lise, on peut passer à la slide 11 et 12. On va les regarder l'un après l'autre, sans pause.
La discipline, c'est l'ordre. Obéir à des lois n'est pas seulement un devoir, mais une nécessité vitale.
Locarno, 2 août 1927. Les socialistes suisses attaquent nos collaborateurs italiens et les accusent de collaboration fasciste. Le Bureau international de l'éducation menace de se retirer s'il y a un représentant du gouvernement fasciste italien. Le soir, des Allemands, les Schulreformers radicaux, se sont montrés violents Ils ont déclaré trouver certains orateurs de notre congrès trop bourgeois.
Face aux tensions nationalistes, sociales, religieuses qui montent en Europe, la Ligue ne veut pas prendre position.
Le mensonge sur lequel est bâtie la Ligue vient de la neutralité politique et religieuse. Si un jour, malheureusement prochain, une guerre se déclenche avant que l'éducation nouvelle ait réalisé la rénovation intérieure des individus, que fera alors la Ligue?
Donc maintenant la 12, s'il te plaît.
Au home chez nous, j'ai trouvé des enfants affamés de tendresse. Une atmosphère de fraîcheur, de sincérité, d'entraide.
On cite
des directrices
les
qui
modes
disent avoir besoin
Ferrière,
d'un appui,
qui est à la base de ce film,
conseils en
qui a
matière
réalisé ce film, qui
d'enseignement, et
était
les suivait en
tourné
matière
dans les
d'éducation
Hauts de
dès avant
Lausanne,
que je les leur eusse donné.
dans une institution qui s'appelle Home chez nous.
Je m'y sens à
This film is from Ferrière, and it's cited, quoted correctly, and it's situated near Lausanne.
Là, on peut arrêter, oui. Peut-être que l'autre n'était pas nécessaire. Hein. Celui-là était... Simplement, là, c'est exact. On cite Ferrière et on montre des images qui lui correspondent. Là, tout est correct. Hein.
So this time the quote is correct. They're telling the truth about the archival images.
Troisième exemple,
Third
où là,
example.
c'est vraiment le pire, disons.
Third example is the worst.
Alors, on peut passer à la slide 14, s'il te plaît.
Le national-socialisme veut récupérer ce programme. Du haut des cimes enneigées, est-ce le même horizon que chacun contemple?
Donc là, on parle de la situation de l'école nouvelle en Allemagne quand les nazis récupèrent et éliminent le fondateur de l'école nouvelle en Allemagne. Voilà. Et regardez bien ces images qui viennent juste après les trois enfants.
So these images are the narrator is talking about German school with the Nazis who
En
just killed
1932,
the reformer
au
of
vide
the
de
school.
Crowley, l'aîné des
And these
fondateurs de la
images
Ligue, meurt.
On peut arrêter. Donc, les images que vous venez de voir, les petits enfants en culotte sur les cimes blanches, on peut très bien croire qu'on est dans la suite de la situation de l'école nouvelle en Allemagne, avec les Allemands, les nazis qui ont récupéré. Or, ça, c'est des images qui sont tournées à l'ESA. Les enfants sont soignés pour des problèmes de tuberculose, merci, et ça n'a rien à voir. Mais imaginez que ce film, dans 30 ans, il est traité.
So the narration is talking about Germany and the Nazis, but the images show actually children in Lausanne in the Swiss mountains following a health treatment for tuberculosis. So imagine if later the film is archived.
Quelqu'un doit documenter ce film dans 30 ans, ne connaît pas les images, ne reconnaît pas les dents du midi à l'arrière du plan. Ben pour lui, c'est des petits-enfants rééduqués par les nazis dans les Alpes au-dessus de Munich.
So if 30 years later,
voilà, merci.
somebody wants to archive this film and they don't recognize the Swiss mountains, well, they will think that it's actually in Germany and it's German children, and it's not true.
Donc, tout ce qui est dit dans le documentaire, je peux y faire confiance. Tout ce qui m'est montré au-dessus du discours, en tant que personne qui a fourni des images et qui les a reconnues, je me méfie.
So everything that is said in the documentary you can trust, but as somebody who gave images to do this film, he cannot trust the truth claim of the images.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. So so I wanted to open the floor for questions from you. You've got a question.
Yes, I'm Laurent Roth. I am a French film director involved in ARCHIVAL process, but by chance, I am the last scriptwriter of the film New Education. So I can give you our viewpoint dealing with archives. We had these various serious discussion from the very start of the film. If you remember, we mentioned apocalypse during the First World War, with many images from documentaries, more or less reports. You know that there are very few images shot on the battles during the First World War, but we tried to mingle every kind of sources, even fiction films, you know. And I think in this film, it's very clear from the start that we mix sources to convey a very strong feeling of the main theme of the film, that is childhood and the body of children. That's the main thing on the sensible feeling of the film. So, of course, you are completely right about the mingling of the sources. But, for instance, when I wrote the sentence about those children bathing in the suns on the mountains, the sentence is the founder, de Crowley, who is Belgium, died, and the bodies of the children relaxed and fall to the ground. So it's not so clear in the film that we try to stick every word on every image. There is a kind of play between the image and sounds, on image and words. On my point, is not arguing with you, but it's just to mention that, as Susanna introduced, we can, as filmmakers, assume that we had a kind of poetical viewpoint that is stronger than information. But we have to make it clear from the very start of the film. I agree with you with this point. It has to be clear from the very start. That's why we have this discussion about the first minute. If we, for instance, keep fiction films showing Verdun or not. And the director, Joanna Grozinska, decided to keep I think it's a Kubrick film. And she told me we have to make clear for the audience that the film will mix the sources.
Qui explique ce que vous venez de me dire aux spectateurs?
But now I haven't seen the film, but the film was shown in Lisbon last week, and there was a German in the audience that was shocked because of the German images that did not correspond what have been said. It was exactly the same feeling. Maybe it was not, well, I didn't see the film, but maybe it was not enough clear, but it was the same, in one point. Yeah. Someone that can read German see different things as well, yeah, but
I don't want to make a point about one only film, but this one is very interesting because of the indistinction of the images in the way that at a certain moment you recognize a difference between what is shown and what is said. But there are images like Michel Dain said, were connected with the activity of the teachers. And there are several genres. This one is a kind of a propaganda film about l'École Nouvelle, you know that. But there are also experimentation with cinema, which are different. And I think that what the film misses is an indication about the different levels of those images. And it's a very interesting case because you did use so many different sources, which make us realize, oh, there are so many sources about that movement, and this is a discovery. But at the same time, the discovery is in a certain way neutralized. As a film historian, I feel that, and as a spectator also, I feel neutralized because at a certain moment, the value of the differences is erased by what you call the poetical use of the images.
No, actually, we have to get the mic if possible because it's recorded. So.
I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but I'm very interested. Maybe you had experience because I would like to ask about archive, not in the classical meaning, but or the contemporary, the archives which are coming from the social media. If you have experience working with them, what are the legal problems, issues, and maybe this question would be rather addressed to the filmmakers if you have done research or like how you work, how do you ask for permission, and what are the possibilities to use this all this massive data which is available and coming every day more and more. Thank you.
This is a big problem because it's so easy now with social media to get footage, very rare footage. For example, we are just producing a film about the Bolex camera, and the director was looking for some directors' footage, and then it was very difficult to get the rights, because we have to have the rights because it's a film which will be broadcast by television and will be in cinemas. So as producer, I have to clear all the rights, and at the end it was not possible to find all the right owners of the material she wanted to have in the film. And even it was very good material, it was not possible to get the rights, and so we had then in the beginning you think it makes you the life quite easy if you have all this material, but at the end it's you are so much disappointed when you don't get at the end the rights of this footage. So yeah, it's difficult, you know? But you have to clear the rights, and sometimes it's very difficult to find out who really has the right of. Especially it's about John Lennon, Yoko Ono, and material from Jonas Mekas and other. Some of it we could clear, but some not. And this is at the end. I think you're very unhappy if you make your whole rough cut with this kind of footage, and at the end you have to throw away perhaps 1/3 of it.
My production company once produced a film, and we had to find some images of demonstrations, and they were in the YouTube. So we enter in contact with the person who put the images there, and we try to clear the rights. And usually people sell, for some amount the rights for us to use the images, and sometimes they send us with a proper resolution, quality. Yeah,
If they have done that by themselves.
If they have done that by themselves, yeah. So luckily we had this experience, and we could find the people who shoot the actual images, and they were the same who put them in online. So yeah, but we need, especially if you are going to use it for television. If not, it's completely different. I was in New York it was in November, December, and it was an installation, a short film by Arthur. I forgot the name. Oh my God! It will come in a minute. And it was a piece of 7 minutes, a magnificent piece, 7 minutes, and all the images were. I don't want to use this expression, stolen. And the logos were there, Getty images, so everyone. But it's also, it became part of the work. And this is the interesting thing. And as it was in the art field, an installation, it could show it. Now things are quite different even in the art field, but at least there it could be shown. And of course it was part of the film itself, and this is quite interesting, I think.
Thank you for opening this can of very interesting worms. Obviously, social media is fantastic if one can use it wisely, and it's difficult for all the things that have already been explained. I'm not a big social media user at all, but I use YouTube a lot just for fun, as a private person. I'm not the archivist 24 hours a day, or maybe I am, but I also have another life, and I look at other things. And the general misconception that people have now is that YouTube is an archive, which is not the case. You will be surprised. If you look at something and you want to find it again, then usually you don't find it again because it has been taken down by someone. And not only the copyright owners are taking things down, but YouTube themselves take things down, or things just die because no one is doing something on this account long enough or whatever. It is very fragile. It's just a moving substance, let's say, that is just hovering around the globe, and you can get into it whenever you open up your laptop and see something, but you don't be surprised if it's not an archive and things are just gone, and then you will never find them again, maybe because you don't know where this came from. On the other hand, also for filmmakers, it is of course a fantastic source of inspiration, I would imagine. But on the other hand, the resolution that is there is completely unusable. So you want to go and find the originals for those things again, and then you are back with some archive, and maybe there is no archive for this clip because it's not, the source is not mentioned, which is too bad, because most users of social media, of course, don't think about these questions that we discuss here at all. They just have an interesting image and they want to broadcast it out into the world, which is fantastic. But they don't think about what happens to this picture in 50 years from now, or let alone 500 years from now. You know, and that it's a different thing. It's just, I don't know. It's even not even comparable to earlier media outlets because it is so different in terms of fragility. It's not even like a newspaper from 1600 so-and-so, which you can find in the State Library. You can still find it. You know, YouTube of 1999 is probably not there anymore. Or, well, it's probably too early for YouTube anyway, but today's YouTube won't be there tomorrow in its entirety. Unless it is channels that are very well kept by probably huge organizations, and let's not fool ourselves. It's becoming a very commercial thing. It is not only individuals who do their own private thing there and have 300 viewers. I mean, I sometimes am the first viewer on a clip, and I always think, how is that possible? Am I so bizarre that I'm only the only other person interested in the subject? But the more stable things are, of course, run by corporations on YouTube.
So, does this discussion answer your question? Great. So, is there any other questions from you? Sure.
I would like to ask Martin and Michel if you are peculiarly interested in amateur films. Do you make a call or campaign to get some home movies? And because as a filmmaker, I think it can be very relevant for many subjects, and we have a kind of new awareness of this type of material, whose information is more ambiguous but very poetical sometimes.
Est-ce que vous cherchez activement des films amateurs? Ah non, on ne les cherche pas activement. Par contre, le rôle d'une cinémathèque, enfin de notre mission principale, c'est la préservation du patrimoine.
Yes, they do collect amateur films. The principal role of a cinematheque is to have the national film.
Voilà. Et puis, ça dépend tout du support. Si vous avez quelqu'un qui souhaite déposer des films de ses grands-parents, c'est-à-dire des films amateurs des années 20, ils ont pour nous un immense intérêt parce que c'est quelques bobines.
It depends on which format the film can be deposited, but for example, if somebody wants to give the Cinémathèque Suisse the film of their grandparents from the 1920s, it can be very interesting for the film heritage.
Et je vais à l'autre bout, mais je m'arrête à la VHS. Si quelqu'un veut nous remettre les VHS qu'il a fait quand il était jeune, ben on refuse. Parce que Sauf si dans une de ces VHS, il y a peut-être, là on demande une liste et on trouve peut-être quelque chose, mais voilà, c'est le support, c'est la quantité, c'est les sujets. Donc des films de famille du début du siècle restent intéressants. Des films de famille après l'apparition de la vidéo, ça me paraît beaucoup moins intéressant. Mais là, la discussion est ouverte.
And for speaking for VHS, if there is somebody who wants to give their VHS, generally the Cinematheque says no, because it's not a good support for preservation. But depending on the subject that can be in it, if they give us a list, we can be interested in keeping a VHS or transferring it to a better format.
Yeah, I generally agree, but I disagree with myself, because I think this is a very problematic approach in the long run, because if we consider a film from 1917 valuable as such, because it's from 1917, we will privilege the rich people who made films for their families in 35mm nitrate in 1917 over those who make not even VHS in 2017. It's probably something on a chip, which is even more fragile than VHS. And they're not necessarily rich. So, and we will not be interested in it now, unless it is something very striking on it. But we might be interested in 100 years from now, when I'm thankfully no longer there to think about it. But the images will be gone, because they're so much more fragile. Yeah. We do operate with amateur films to some extent, but I mean, you can only do so much. We don't have an amateur film curator, for instance, which would be needed, because there's so much stuff and you would have to make systematic sense of it. We did participate in the Home Movie Day for a couple of years. After I first came into this office in 2007, that was already going on, and I welcomed that, and we did it for like 3 or 4 5 times. And then it became very repetitive, and we stopped doing it, because it was not the same people came and showed more of their films, and it didn't really reach out as far as we would have liked to. But we found some very interesting things during that period. And we got some interesting oeuvres in of people who actually wanted to donate their films, who had been making films since the 1940s, for instance, and were at the end of their lives and wanted to find a home for it. And so they came to the Home Movie Day, and we became the home. Yeah. And those films one can use, and they show interesting things, even if they are not home movies sometimes. They're films. You know, there are really out there are people who don't make home movies with home movie equipment, but they make oeuvres. And that is interesting as such, sometimes. And sometimes it's terrible. And then you have to make a choice. But what we also did in 1989, as you know, the Berlin Wall came down, and when there are every 5 years or so, there are these jubilees of this event, of course, and all you see on these jubilee television shows is like 8th generation Betacam SP on pushed up to plus 32 dB because it was at night and there were no lights, and printed down like 8 times now to digibeta, and it looks absolutely terrible, and it's always the same imagery. You've always seen it at least 20 times, because we had so many jubilees already over the last 27 years. And when there was a need, apparently a national need, to have a celebration 20 years after the event, and all the national institutions, including ours, were told to do something. So they wanted to have we do an exhibition or something, and we said, well, I don't want to see this Spiegel TV, not even digibeta, something rather, people doing their fists on the Trabants again. It makes no sense. And we came up with a scheme to ask the public about their images, not only from Berlin, but from throughout the country, from the period between the faked elections in May 1989, which started everything, up to the 3rd of October 1990, which is 1.5 years later, when the unification was official. And that created a huge influx of still images, thousands, of course, and also moving images in all kinds of formats, Super 8, normal 8, 16mm, video, VHS, of course. And from that we created an exhibition which ran a couple of months in our exhibition in our museum. So we fulfilled the requirement, but in a more intelligent way, I hope. And we created a website where you can still access all this stuff. And we made arrangements with the authors that we could use it for this purpose. And sometimes people still come to us and want to use this footage, and then we can refer them back to the original owners who have the originals, or they will allow us to use our transfers. So in that way, amateur film can make a lot of sense if you contextualize it right away. This is an extreme example because it's this kind of national holiday thing, but of course you can think of other themes. If you have the means to organize it that way, then I think amateur film can be a fantastic source. But it's better to make a project and catalog it and contextualize it right away rather than do random collection. Yeah, selection. This is the most terrible thing we have to do, and we have to throw out stuff. I mean, let's face it, archiving is not about keeping things. Archiving is about destroying things. That's our mandate, and it's terrible, but very relieving.